So I'm Satish Dharmaraj, and I am a general partner here with Red Point Venture Capital in Sandal Road in Menlo Park, California. And I used to be the founder and CEO of Zimbra before I became a venture capitalist. So that's my background. I used to before I became a partner. I was an angel. Angel investments, I've probably done about five, I think. Pitches, I pretty much sit on a couple of pitches a day at least, something, something like that, maybe. So far, four at Red Point, yeah. A lot. I mean, we definitely, we look at we look at three things really. I mean, the first thing is whether uh, the team is really good. So people is a big, anchor point on whether are these the kinds of entrepreneurs that we want to back? Are these the kinds of entrepreneurs that can scale a mountain and build a great product and build a great business? So that's the first part. And the second part is the product or the idea. Uh, is that something that's defensible? Is that something that's interesting? Is it innovative? And then the third thing is the market, and that's where the traction part comes in, which is this first? Is this an interesting enough market? Is this market ripe to be disrupted? Is Can people try different things in this market to capture share from someone else? Is it a new market that someone is creating, or is someone trying to take money away from an existing incumbent in an existing market? And in all those cases, the big question is, okay, how do you insert this into this market? I mean, is the traction question is, how does this get enough scale such that it becomes an interesting and viable product in that market? No, only because I'm still a young and newer investor. So far, thankfully not. Uh, Essentially, because more so because many of them are still in their product phase and haven't yet gotten into the traction phase. So I won't say I picked 100% of all winners. I'm sure they're all going to be all over the place in terms of traction, but you know. Yeah, so depending on what kind of company it is and what kind of market they're going after. So whether it's a consumer market or a business, are they a SaaS software solution, or is it more like posturous, going towards consumers? Different strategies can be applied to see whether or not we can regain traction. I mean, a big thing about gaining traction is that the product should resonate with the customers in the market. So that basically means how intuitive is the product, how innovative is the product, how simple is the product, what are the barriers to entry to adopt the product. So do does if it's a consumer facing product, does the consumer have to go and do eight different things before they can start using the product, or can they start using the product right away? And so how do you remove all the barriers to entry? That's a big. So usability, UI, those are kinds of things that can lead to it. The second thing obviously is virality. which is, once someone uses a product, how do you get their friends to use it? And that goes across from both consumer and business software segments, which is, if someone is using your software, do they recommend it to their friends? And on the consumer side, it is if someone is using your software, does it naturally lead itself because of the actions that they take? Does it pull in, your friends in? And PayPal is a great example of that. I'm paying you $5, and you're like, well, why am I getting an email that Satish is paying me $5? Oh yeah, wait, what is this PayPal thing? And all of a sudden you're hooked. And then the third thing is partnerships, which is which is largely distribution, which is okay. What are my channels to distribute this product to as many people as possible? So can I make a distribution deal with a few partners who are already shipping? Like for instance, can my software be embedded in every Nokia or Samsung phone that's being shipped? Can my software be part of every desktop that Dell ships or something like that? What's my distribution channel such that my software is shipped either via viral distribution from a website or through physical shipments of computers or through a reseller, or is it part of a big stack that someone assembles that is OEM, as in it's white label, so it's not even my software. It's my software, but it doesn't have my brand on it, but yet it's distributed under someone else's brand. So there's a lot of channel and OEM strategies around distributing software, partnerships, bundling. So those are several ways in which we can think of rejiggering the lack of traction. I mean, is the product hitting the sweet spot? Is it solving a specific problem? If not, there's a more fundamental product problem, right? But if the product is fixing a specific problem and is solving a specific pain point, then, and the next thing is it intuitive? Is it easy to use? Is it usable? And if it passes all those tests, then, you know, is there a way in which you can distribute it virally? And then are there channels and partnerships who could help distribute the product? Yeah, his was. So Zimbra is a open source collaboration suite which basically implements email and contacts and multi-user delegated scheduling and calendaring and simple web-based document authoring and sharing, all in open source. On the back end and on the front end, it pretty much pioneered what is now called as Ajax and presents a really rich interface that's available to you from the web. Pretty much, yes. Yeah, interestingly, for Zimbra, what happened was, there was years and years of pent up frustration on Outlook and Exchange. Outlook from the end user point of view, and Exchange and its administration headaches from the IT administrator's point of view. So it actually hit both the IT administrator pain point on the back end and the end user facing pain point on the front end. And what we did was we were one of those companies that raised a bunch of money and then went into stealth for 2 years. And when we emerged with the product, we basically came up with all of the different innovations of Zimlets, which is, early on, we started saying, hey, we're going to build an ecosystem. We're not going to solve all of the world's problems, but here's a great RESTful web services API that other people can plug into. So your CRM system and your ERP system and your travel system and your LDAP and your Google Calendar and your Evites and what have you. And now these days, Twitter and Facebook and everything is integrated, can all be integrated into your email platform. So it's open, which basically, going back to your traction point, is allows you to not kind of exist in an island, but have bridges to every other software out there, and productivity suites out there, such that you bring in your Salesforce fans, and you bring in your LinkedIn fans, and you bring in your Twitter fans, and you bring in and your blogging fans, all sort of more of a platform play that embraces everything else around it. And the first time when we launched, the first demo that I gave, which was at Web 2.0, we demoed the concept of Zimlets, which is, and this we demoed some simple things like, when you get an email, you asking you, are you available next Monday? And we can scroll over next Monday, and you can see what your appointments look like next Monday. And then, without leaving the email, figure out whether or not you can meet next Monday and suggest some times at which you can meet next Monday without having to leave the app and go to the calendar app and come back again. Similarly, we did a mashup with Google Maps, which got a lot of buzz, because they had just launched the Google Maps a few weeks ago, and we showed how when someone sends you an email or a calendar appointment with a specific address, that you can mouse over on the address, and inside of the email render a map on where the location is. Again, showing the power of mashups and API ecosystems. And so we got a lot of buzz right away. No, what we went about doing is going after an open source business model, which, yes. So we by the time we launched the company, we had already put the open source bits on the web, but we hadn't made a lot of, those days Twitter and Facebook had not yet taken up. We're talking about 2004. And so, uh, and we launched it at the Web 2.0 conference, and then did a lot of developer kind of grassroots blogging, and Slashdot and Dig was just coming up, kind of uh, getting the systems administrators excited about an open source alternative to Microsoft Exchange, and the end users excited about a really, really powerful web UI. And so the way we got traction was people started downloading the open source bits, and it was completely free, and we never launched anything for pay for the first year. So for 6 to 9 months, we basically just had the open source bits, allowed people to download it and use it at no charge and give us feedback, and always promised them that everything that they download will always be open source and will always be available to them. So it was not like a bait and switch, as in, we're going to put something out there for free and then 6 months later we're going to charge you. Um, what we did 6 months later is come up with brand new features that were yet unreleased, that we charged for, and we also charged for support and hosting and things like that. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and not only the first year, but throughout the lifetime of the business, we always had an open source piece, which was, always available at no charge. And people used to take that. Actually, some of our competition took our open source and embedded it into their own products, because the entire UI, which was so sexy, was available at for well, at open source, and so people used that, and it was all open APIs, and so we were good with all of that, because from our viewpoint, it was getting the word out about Zimbra, and people doing marketing for us at no charge, because they were using Zimbra and they were talking about it to someone else, and they were distributing Zimbra from their sites. We were not making money, but it was free marketing for us. Oh, right. Endlessly. So, it's a scary thought because you're taking your crown jewels and 2 years worth of innovation and all of the sexiness and Ajax and all the backends and the REST APIs and everything and making it all open and available to everyone. And the gamble you're taking is that the distribution benefits that you get and the goodwill and the marketing that you get from all the people who use it for free gives you enough leverage to get people who are serious about using it in their businesses, large universities, large businesses, large ISPs, which were all Zimbra customers in the end, to pay for it because they felt that there was a big ecosystem. It was a credible open source play, and a lot of people were talking about it. And it's innovative, and there's a freedom of choice, and it's open, and therefore they're going to pay for it because they want support from us, and they want all of the added kind of plumbing in and around the open source core that we provided. And so it was, yeah, it was widely debated, but in the end, it worked out well for us. Yes, you're right. We could have done that, and that was an option that we debated that we said. And actually, after we launched an open source, a couple of years later, a couple of our competition started doing open source as well because they said, "Hey, how can we compete against this kind of viral distribution?" Right? But I felt that if we had done that, we wouldn't have gotten. If we had not open sourced it from day one, then 2 years down the road, it would have been a business model shift, thinking around the company. I mean, we wanted to have that kind of a DNA and think about the business that way from day one. You do things differently when you think about it that way from day one, as opposed to let's try and you know change everything in the last minute, without having that culture, that open culture from day one. For me, so it was interesting. It was a black and white decision for me and a bunch of developers. It was not a black and white decision. So it was, there were never people on the gray. People were, saying, "Oh my God, this is the way to go," and people saying, "Wait a minute, you're going to give away all the software?" I mean, that's craziness, kind of a thing. So. That's a hard question because I cannot tell where I think we would have been successful nevertheless, because we had a great product and we had a great business model and distribution strategy. And combined with that, in that day and age, where the general market around us was saying, "Hey, this browser is interesting and JavaScript in the browser is interesting," and we were right in the middle of that tornado. So we could have launched anywhere and it would have been successful. Having said that, that conference gave us a great platform because it was a consumer conference and we were launching a business product, and yet we kind of felt that this was, I feel like that was the genesis of the consumerization of the internet, where we launched a great business product in a great consumer conference like Web 2.0. Right. It was all of the above, so it was the right product at the right time for sure. It was a product that fixed a specific pain point around, it was the only, at that point when we launched, and maybe even today, but I'm not sure, the only kind of open source product that actually fixed all the, that had the group scheduling calendar in open source. So if you wanted like a group scheduling calendar, there's a lot of open source email servers, but there wasn't like an integrated suite. Um, and I would say that was the only like client that was also open source that encompassed all of Outlook's functionality. So it was the right product at the right time. But also we worked really hard on the community where we were being true open source kind of citizens. We hired two people in developer support to support the open source community and to build the forums and give a platform and host a platform for people to come in and contribute their ideas and discover each other. So we did all of those things. We never handicapped the open source release. So the open source release, you could download it and you could use it right away. So it wasn't like, you know, to use the open source release, you had to jump through 10 hoops, but to use the paid for release, it worked like a charm. The open source release worked like a charm. There was no barriers to entry to it. The package We spent a lot of time in the installation and packaging of the open source releases that it was you could install it and get it running. People were running it on a Mac Mini. That's how crazily simple we made it. So we did a lot of things right in the community, and also APIs. We made clean, RESTful APIs, documented them, so we wrote blogs about it. So all of those things help. Our business was an interesting one. I mean, we spent marketing money only on two things. One is the website, and the other is PR, right? Every other, interestingly for us, because our marketing was the development cost for the open source product. So our marketing was the open source product. So our marketing budget was really minimal. But you could also say that all of the money that was raised was spent in marketing, because all of the money that was raised, or 95% of the money that was raised, was spent in building a product that we put in open source, and open source was our biggest marketing, and that you could argue that was our biggest marketing. So I don't know if that answers you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think for us it was really helpful. We created a product that went across segments. So while we got, through grassroots marketing, we got many of the developers and the systems administrators who were tuned in to the open source ecosystem. We wanted to also appear like a credible company in the minds of a Bechtel, who happens to be one of Zimbra's customers, or Stanford University, or any of the bigger names, Comcast. And so we wanted to also establish, our credibility in those kinds of circles. And so we spent money in PR and doing that, and it was pretty helpful. Hold on. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, trade publication, right? You're right. Trade publication write-ups. I don't know if you know this, but we were in page one of the Wall Street Journal. So we did, you know, wanted to appeal to that segment of the customers as well. And so, to get into the page one of the Wall Street Journal, it's not enough to just do PR. We got to do PR. We got to have a great product, a great customer story, and everything has to weave together to be a disruptive story that's, the journal picks up and then decides that it's not enough to be on the first page of the business section, but the first page of the journal itself. And so, you know, we fired on all of those things. Yeah. Yeah, OneBox.com was an early .com company. We started in '98. Basically, it was putting your answering machine on the web. So think about Google Voice. That's pretty much what it was, excepting it didn't have, you know, it was more call termination rather than call origination. So it was unified messaging, so it could route faxes and emails and voicemails. You could get your own number with your own area code, and that'll be your answering machine, and you would forward your home phone and your cell phone to that number, and then from then on, you could go to the web and check your voicemail, or you could give out that number to someone and they can fax you something, and you can go to the web and there'll be a PDF of the fax for you. I would say it was virality, and the virality occurred because people would leave me a voicemail, right? And I would shoot them back an email, right? Saying, hey, I'll reply to their voicemail by an email. And so let's assume you left me a voicemail. And you would say, hey, Satish, I want to talk to you at 5:30 today. And I reply to the voicemail with an email that says 5:30 doesn't work, but 6 works. And you're like, wait a minute. You look at the body of the email and you're like, well, I left him a voicemail, and this guy is replying by email. What is? And it says powered by OneBox in the end. And so you're like, hey, I want my voicemails. I want to be able to reply to my voicemails by emails. Well, let me check out this OneBox thing. Boom. You're a customer now. And so, the ability to reply or forward voicemails to your friends led to a sort of a virality that, you know, that made it possible. Yeah, I would say that was a big dominant factor. Yeah, and we did a bunch of distribution deals, right? So we were, at that time, Zoom.com and ZDNet and all of these, there was a Bolt.com teenage site, and we would go to all those sites and say, hey, like Bolt.com was at that point the big teenage social networking kind of site in the 1.0 area, right? It wasn't when social networking was just forums and stuff like that. But say, hey, do you want a voicemail number? You know, and they would get a voicemail number, to exchange voicemails. So it was a combination of virality of the service as well as distribution deals with web properties to add voicemail to their consumer service. Yeah. Wow. I don't think they're necessarily correlated. I think if you have, depends on the product, but if you have a product that's really viral, and let's say, a founding team of 4 or 5 developers get together, create a product that becomes really viral and throw it out on the web, and it just goes viral, that is a possibility to get traction. But then once it gets traction, the problem is it depends on the product a lot, because if there is no revenue model, but yet you want to sustain the virality, you want to buy all of the machines. Twitter is a great example, right? I mean, they don't have a business model yet, but heck, they want to accumulate hundreds of millions of users to their service, and so they want to create a massive data center that never goes down and support the virality. So you can gain the traction, but can you support the traction, right? So to support the traction, you need venture capital. To gain the traction, you probably don't. So you can put a service out there that starts growing like a weed, and at some point you need to buy servers and storage and compute in order to sustain that traction that you are getting, and that's when you want to go raise. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, either find a better idea. Finding a better idea is a hard thing to say to an entrepreneur, right? But say, hey, how are you going to get? How is this idea going to get massive adoption or traction? Why, right? What is it about it? What is it that you're doing is that's going to just really, set the world on fire in that segment, So, this is a religious topic, almost, but I don't think entrepreneurship can be learned. I think it has to be innate. It's got to be in your genes a little bit, because one thing is, you have. I almost think there has to be a certain level of naivete to go try and fail fast, and then try something else and fail fast, right? Um, and be able to be bold enough to think, if I do this, this, and this, that could set the world on fire, right? Like the pastors guy said, if if I could make publishing really, really that simple, maybe a lot of people will start publishing who would have otherwise not thought of publishing. And that's a hypothesis at that point, but but so, yeah. My larger point being, entrepreneurs take risky moves and aren't afraid of failing, and they learn from their failures. Yes. Yeah, I kind of felt that. Yeah, no, no, I wish I could say that. When I invested in Postgres as an angel, we're talking about, not this round. This round was a institutional round, and we do a lot of diligence, before we invest. But as an angel, it was totally a gut feel. I mean, it was literally an hour's meeting with Sachin and Gary. At the end of it, I told them I'm in, because I looked at these guys, and felt like these guys had the fire in their belly. Looked at the service; it was dead simple. And I'm like, yeah, maybe all these guys who don't publish today will start publishing, because this is such an easy on ramp into it, and this is where the world is going. Everyone wants user generated content. You know. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think, if it's a good idea but it's too early for its time. There's been a lot of times when you wait it out for 3 or 4 years and then it catches on, right? So if you can sustain the burn rate, and you can keep things running, why not? Um, it's a tough one. I mean, at some point you gotta give up and try the next thing, right? I mean, but if your gut feel is still there on it, you as the entrepreneur, and you think that there's still something here, don't I would say don't give up. If you can sustain the burn, keep the burn really low, let it, you know, keep it going and see when it hits. Unfortunately, unfortunately, that's the case. Yeah, I think one of the things that you should try and do is to get like brutally honest feedback from your family and friends who might fit the target profile of the user that you're going after, right? So if you're going after the teenagers, go talk to your niece or someone like that and ask your niece or nephew to talk to their friends and give you feedback on, what that is. Make it easy for users to like critique you as much as it is to praise you, right? I mean, and when you launch the service, look for engagement. I mean, someone just trying it once and going away, or someone trying step one, step two, and then going away, and then you ask yourself, well, what was step three that scared them away, right? And see where your user acquisition is it coming from. Is that because is it always they just type in the URL of your site and just start using it? Or are they coming in through some referral? Or is it through a viral seed that you planted? Or is it through a partner site that you have a partnership with? Or is it through SEO or SEM techniques that you're using in Google? So, where are your users coming from? And why are they coming there? And how far are they getting on your site once they reach there? And then after the first time, how engaged are they? So measure churn and churn of engagement in a big way. Yeah, and make it easy. Make the on ramp easy.